a sheet out of your notebook paper and then send it around. Can you do, who's going to take it out? Lexi? Okay, can you do 3 columns? So write period 3 on the left, period 4 in the middle, and then period 5 on the right. And then make sure you write your name in the correct column, okay? Maddie, it's on?
Yep.
Okay, so test tomorrow is going to be 80 points. So there are total of 65 questions. 65 questions. And then there's an essay. So 65 questions and an essay. Of those 65 questions, 25 are matching. Of those 25 matching, 15 are parts of the brain. Where it would say like number 1, and number 1 would be pointing at this green part, and you would say the green part, if I'm holding, what am I holding first of all?
The brain. Oh.
What part specifically? Okay, cerebellum. So if that's over here, what lobe is here in the green part?
The frontal.
Frontal lobe. So there'd be like number 53 is in the middle of that, and then you, on the matching section, it would give you like 10 options, and you would fill in the right bubble that matches with that, okay? Everybody understand that? Pretty straightforward?
You're going to have more specific things too, like the...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, everything that's in that section is on the brain book. So if you studied the brain book, did a good job on that, you should be fine at that, okay? So it's not just the brain, though. It could be some stuff from the nervous system, could be the cells also. All of that's in there, all right? Well, not all of it, but all of it's fair game to be in there. The other matching section is almost entirely from Chapter 7. So that's just a term or like a word that fits in a sentence, and you have to put it in the right section. So it's that. Some of that's on like types of meditation and types of altered states of consciousness. Then there's 4 essay questions. You pick one. As I said in class today, one of the essay questions asks you to list and define or explain the major divisions of the nervous system. And again, there's more to it than just that, but that's the core of the question. The core of question 2 is list and describe the stages of sleep, again with some other questions to that as well. Question number 3, as I talked about in class, involves basically taking what you did in the Sensation and Perception Lab, as well as some of the terms that we used in the Sensation and Perception Lab, and then relate those to something all of you do this every day. Many of you do it at the same time. Some of you, well, about a third of you would do it at one time, about a third of you would do it later, and about a third of you would do it about a half hour later.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Raise your hand if you think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh.
Okay. It's really not that hard. And like I said, it's something that you need to do almost every day. You could skip doing it for a couple weeks, but you wouldn't feel good. It wouldn't be pleasant. And eventually you would die if you didn't do this thing. So basically you take some of the stuff we did in the Sensation and Perception Lab, the concepts like just noticeable difference, absolute threshold, sensory adaptation, selective attention, all that, and describe what goes on around that time when about a third of you in this building are doing this thing, and then after about a half hour, a third of you will do it, and then about a half hour later, a third of you would do it. I really hope you figure out what that is. Raise your hand if you get it now.
I did it at first in class and left it
She still doesn't get it?
Oh, okay. I got it.
And then the last one is about theories on dreaming. Like, what does dreaming do? What is the function of dreaming? Okay, so let's go through a few random things. I'm just going to ask you some random questions and we'll go from there. My plan tomorrow, I told this to one of the classes. As you notice, we're going to be in the lab. There's a way to do tests online using Google Forms. Raise your hand if you've done that before in a different class. It's called Google Flubaroo. Basically, there'll be a link I'll put on SharePoint. I'll only enable it for just a little bit while you guys open the link to the test. You take the test like you're filling out a Google form, hit submit, and then it records it on the computer. And then once everybody in that class period's done, I hit like 2 buttons and it'll email your grades out to you.
Oh.
So the other nice thing about that is most people, everybody would get a test in front of you just in case you wanted it, but the screen also would have a test. Most people finish that way faster than the Scantrons. It's just hit a button for A instead of fill in the bubble. And then it saves me time,
And
because I don't have to
paper.
run the Scantrons through. And it saves money also because like a brick of Scantrons is like $60. And there's 500 Scantrons in a brick. I don't pay for them personally, but the money I use to buy whatever else, like supplies, videos, all that, the Scantron supplies eat out of that. So my plan again is to do it on the computer. I'll have some Scantron backups in case people are gone, in case the computers don't work. I've done this 15, 20 times in world history already, so I know how it works. It's just I have a lot of stuff going on, so I don't know if I'll have time to plug it all into the Google thing. Even if we don't do it on the Google thing, we're still going to take it in the lab, and then when you finish, because some people are pretty fast, you'll get like 10, 15 minutes if you're a fast test taker to work on level 2 project or anything else for a different class you want to. Okay? So, that being said, let's go into some of the questions. In the class we talked about a couple of different forms of altered states of consciousness. Altered states of consciousness. What is the one where you actually take something, like you consume something, and then you're in an altered state of consciousness? What's the general term for that? They're called psychoactive drugs. Psychoactive drugs. Okay? What's another example of an altered state of consciousness? Medication would be still in the drug. Meditation. Meditation, good. So what distinguishes meditation?
You alter, like you narrow your like range of, like, you narrow your mind, I guess, and you focus on like one thing.
Right.
Like you calm
Yep.
yourself.
Yeah, so there's a variety of different ways to do this, but yeah, the core thing that they share is that you narrow your attention, focus on like the moment, breathe, control your breath, all that stuff. So the silly example I use for that, I literally do this all the time, though I think I'm nuts. Before I play softball, I sit in the car and I listen to the same start to every song. And then I like close my eyes and breathe and exhale. And then I visualize myself just absolutely destroying the ball. Okay? And then when the music turns to the heavy part of the song, then I like get out and like aggressively get my stuff together and then like walk to the field, like
Punch someone.
just thinking about, yeah. You gotta flip the switch, right? So I don't punch anybody. So I literally do that. So I told you guys that before, didn't I?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example. There's other examples also, but in essence, meditation is where you like focus your mind on the present moment, try to not think about other things, and then also control your breath as well to alter your consciousness, to narrow your focus. What's another example of an altered state of consciousness? Hypnotism. Okay, so what's hypnotism involved?
It's like basically you're convincing yourself of whatever, like you have to be easily persuaded or believe whatever they're doing to you.
Those are some of the characteristics of what's necessary to be hypnotized. But in essence, hypnotism is where like somebody else guides you into a state of altered consciousness. So when you're meditating, you're doing it yourself. You're not in hypnotism. You're not taking drugs. You know, it's somebody guides you through this altered state of consciousness. But that also involves like being highly suggestible. So like people will tell you to do this, and you're like, okay, I'll do it during hypnotism. Okay. Did you have a question?
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What's another example of an altered state of consciousness?
Daydreaming.
Dreaming, sleeping and dreaming. Good. So in sleeping and dreaming, we talked about the different stages. How many stages of sleep are there?
4, 5.
5 if you count REM. REM sleep typically is what? Which stage for people?
4.
Like, does it happen right away for them?
It's
or-
like the last stage.
It's the last one typically, but then they'll go out of it for a while and then go back into it while they're sleeping. What does REM stand for?
Rapid eye movement.
Rapid eye movement. What typically happens while people are in REM sleep?
Dreaming.
They'll dream, and then what happens to their muscles while they're in REM?
No, they relax.
They freeze. Yeah.
Oh.
So like you're not going to move in REM sleep, but there are some people that have like disorders where they will move. So
So when you twitch,
you watched a video about that, didn't you guys? Some of you. Yeah. If you chose for the Chapter 7 assignment, that one of them was about.
you know when people twitch when they sleep, but they're sleeping, they're
Right.
on REM then.
Nope, not in REM. Most people, if they twitch, that'll happen when they're like in stage 1. So you ever be like laying there in bed, and then you're like that,
Yeah, it's
and it
because
kind
I'm
of wakes
dreaming,
you up.
but it's like I'm dreaming about something
So,
when I twitch.
That's stage 1 typically.
So,
So I'll like wake my wife up, or my cat. Our cats always like to sleep by our feet, and I'll do that, and then one of them flies off the bed, and, like tears off down the hall.
okay, can
so-
you dream in any other stages?
Some people do, but vast majority of dreaming occurs in REM sleep.
Because like sometimes my dream will occur
99%.
me to like freak out.
Or it could be that you're just so exhausted that you entered into REM that fast.
Oh,
So you
yeah.
remember that video clip, if you watched it, from the lady, that the news anchor lady? What did it take her, like 90 seconds
Yeah.
to get into REM? And for that story she did, she stayed awake for like 40 hours straight. Because
Yeah, it was 3 days.
it was 3 days straight?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so that'd be 48 plus 24, 72 hours, roughly. That doesn't sound like fun at all. So I got like 4 hours of sleep last night, and I'm just like, no, it's not good. But that's one day. Go ahead.
In the diagram in the book, it showed where it was kind of a line graph. How when you're in REM sleep, it's kind of similar to being in first stage or even close to active. Could you like wouldn't it still be possible to move because you're still technically active, or?
No, most people, when they enter REM, there's a signal in their brain that tells their body to shut down. So what's the part of the brain that deals with sleeping stuff, mostly? 4 letters, starts with a P. Pons. So it sends out a signal basically that says, don't move. And then you won't move unless that signal kind of malfunctions somehow. So we don't know exactly, again, one of the theories we talked about with the essay is that people don't know why we dream necessarily. There's just ideas as to why. But vast majority of people aren't going to move during REM sleep. Okay? He brought up a point also that I was going to get to. In which stage of sleep is your brain the least active? Stage 4. Which stage of sleep while you're actually sleeping is your brain the most active? REM. As you go from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, what happens to your brain? Does it get more active or less active? Less. Good. What's the other type of altered state of consciousness that we talked about that involves using machines? Using machines. There's a video on this about NASA. Biofeedback, exactly. So an example of how some people use biofeedback is if some people have tension headaches, they'll hook up like a sensor to their head, and a lot of times tension headaches are caused by people like slouching, like subconsciously they don't even know they're doing this. So if they're just always sitting like this or always clenching their jaw or doing something, they'll hook up a sensor to that muscle that'll like beep when they do that. It sends them a signal, don't clench your jaw. They'll quit clenching their jaw. After a while they start to do it again. They get tense. That'll beep. It conditions them. It teaches them basically not to do it. So that's an example of biofeedback. Okay? Alright. No, I'm not going to get into detail on these because, again, I want to take more time for stuff that's a little bit more specific. If we have time at the end, I'll do it. But the categories of drugs, so there's a few questions about that. Be aware of those. So be able to identify, like, cocaine. Is that a stimulant or a depressant?
Stimulant.
Stimulant. Alcohol, stimulant, depressant.
Depressant.
Okay, LSD would be what? Starts with H.
What is LSD?
Hallucinogen. Yep. So know those drugs. Like be able to identify which one fits into which. Okay. And again, at the end, if you have questions about that, I'll talk about that specifically. But I want to make sure that we have time. Or do you have?
Is the O one? I don't know what it's called exactly. Like there was one with 4, but it said like our book added like.
Right.
Is that going to be added, or no? Is it just the 3: the stimulant, depressant, and hallucinogen?
I guess I don't know what you're talking about. So.
Opiates, yeah.
Okay. There's a little bit about that on there. You're asking what are the categories, basically.
Well,
The categories are the ones that I pulled from. They're pulled from the text. Okay. So if you look at the text, anybody have your book here? Okay. Are you looking at it right now?
Yeah.
What page number is that?
It shows the table on 198.
Okay. So if you check at page 198, that's the information I'll use. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. When we talked about interpretations of dreams, what would a biological explanation of dreaming say? What would a biological explanation of dreaming say?
Repair the body.
Okay, dreaming functions to help prepare the body or repair the body.
Yeah.
Yep, it could be. Yep. Or to repair the mind. You know, there's different theories. Although most people say that, from what I've read at least, the other stages of sleep are supposed to be like the body preparing time, whereas REM is the one that helps to repair the mind. But again, they disagree a lot on this stuff. Okay. What's another theory for dreaming? Like, what would a psychoanalytical theorist say that dreaming does?
It holds repressed thoughts that when you're awake you would deny or not. Is that right?
It reveals your subconscious thoughts or desires. Yep. So who's the main psychoanalytical theorist? Freud. Good. Give me some examples of some things that can cause hallucinations.
If you're going off of no sleep for a long time, you can start to hallucinate. Your body
Okay.
just automatically
Extreme
does
fatigue. What else?
it. Dehydration.
Yes, certain physical deficiencies could, sure. Like abnormalities in brain structure, like a cancerous tumor or something. What else? Drugs. Good. Okay. What happens to the amount of sleep that people get as they age?
It goes down.
In what way? So
Like
like
the
when
older
you're
you get,
when you're
the less
20 years
sleep.
old to when you're 21 to when you're 22 to when you're 23.
The less sleep you get.
Yeah, but is it like you're 20 and then you get 8 hours, and then when you hit 30 you drop down to 6, and then when you hit 40 you drop down to 5?
No, then it's back way up again.
It goes gradually. It goes gradually. It doesn't start increasing again.
Oh,
The
I thought when you got like
consistency-
old.
The consistency of like your sleeping patterns gets more consistent as you age
Oh, okay.
for the typical person, but the average person gets less sleep as they age, and it's a gradual decrease. It's not like now you're in college, you get 6 hours. College students sleep more than like I do or than other parents do, typically. They might like pull an all-nighter and then turn in a paper and then take a 5-hour nap afterwards. You know, their sleep patterns are less regular, but they sleep more hours than people my age typically. Okay, what is the term for a neuron firing?
Synapses. Synapse.
A synapse is the gap between two neurons. It's 2 words. First word starts with an A.
Action potential.
Action potential. Good. Action potentials operate under something that's called the all or none rule. What does that mean?
That there's either going to be a signal or there's not. There's no in between. There's no it's up and then it stops.
Yep, it's all or none, exactly. Sorry, I was processing some things too. So action potentials are operate under that all or none rule. They don't fire harder, they don't fire softer, they either fire or they don't. Okay. Those we've already talked about. Okay, here we go. What is a sleep disorder where you will fall asleep frequently?
Narcolepsy.
What is a sleep disorder where you'll stop breathing?
Yeah.
What is it? Sleep what? Apnea. Okay, good. So now, with sleep apnea, what are some correlated factors? Like, what are some things that are also risk factors for sleep apnea?
What are the risks for having that, you say?
Yeah, what are correlated factors? So people that have sleep apnea also tend to struggle with what things? Like what other things are risk factors for that?
Like blood pressure. No.
It could, I guess I don't know about blood pressure, but that could be the case. I gotta get a snack here. Obesity is one of the things that's correlated with sleep apnea, as well as diabetes. Those kind of go hand in hand. Okay. What is one of the things that they'll use hypnotism for?
Like to stop smoking cigarettes or lose weight.
Okay. What if they,
I guess to entertain.
entertainment, yeah. But this question is just too hard to ask and reword, so maybe I'll skip it. Come back to it later and think of a way to reword it. Okay. What are some of the correlated factors with SIDS? First of all, what is SIDS?
Sudden infant death.
Sudden infant death syndrome. What are some correlated factors with that?
Like secondhand smoke. What?
Teen pregnancy.
Smoking?
Say it loud so the video can hear what I'm eating.
Oh,
Anybody else?
I think you can hear me. It's like right there.
Fetal alcohol syndrome.
Any use of drugs as well.
Basically anything related to breathing, because the baby dies from asphyxiation, but they still don't necessarily know what causes it. Okay. What is, if, alright, we tested this today. Let's say that I mix just a little bit of, whatever, chocolate in here. Okay? I just had a little bit of chocolate, so. Let's say I just put a little bit of chocolate in here, I taste it, can't taste the chocolate at all. Put a little bit more chocolate, can't taste it, put a little bit more, now I can taste it. I've reached what type of threshold?
Actually, no.
Absolute. When you first can tell it's in there, it's absolute.
Should
So
be.
now, I have just a little bit of chocolate in here, I can taste and tell that there's chocolate in here. I add a little bit more, and I can tell it's a little bit stronger. Add a little bit more, I can tell it's a little bit stronger. Every time I add some and I can tell that it's a little bit stronger, which threshold have I crossed? Difference threshold. What's that also called? Just noticeable difference. Okay? If you don't notice something, whether it's taste, smell, brightness, basically the less intensity of a stimulus, the more you're exposed to it, what's that called? So the example I used in class was, you go to a farm, smells like poop right away. Over time you don't smell as much. You don't smell as much because of what? Sensory adaptation. Good. Now, what's the term for how, like, let's say I started adding chocolate to this again, right? So I add like a gram, and then I add another gram. So it goes from having 1 gram to 2 grams. I'm going to tell the difference, right? I can say, all right, that's a lot stronger. But if I got up to like 50 grams and went to from 50 to 51 grams, it'd be hard to tell the difference because there's already so much in there. What is that an example of? I mentioned that in class a little bit. It's in the book.
Is that kind of like when we did the softball thing?
Yeah, that's just noticeable difference, but you also experience that in the softball thing a little bit. It's called Weber's Law, spelled with a W, okay, because it's a German guy. So, Weber's Law. And that basically says that as you add more stimulus, it gets harder to identify the just noticeable difference. So take volume, for example. I turn my car volume up. My wife thinks I'm crazy because it's always real loud. But I go from like 35 to 37. You can't really tell that much of a difference. But if I'm at like 16, I go from 16 to 18, you can tell that that's a pretty big gulf, right? So the higher I get, the harder it is to tell the difference in the increase in volume. That's an example of Weber's Law. I used hot sauce for an example also. You remember that in class? At least in some of the classes. Balthazar looks confused.
No.
Oh, you're right?
Yeah.
Okay. I showed some graphs on this today. If you're looking at like an image and you fill in the gaps to try to figure out what the image is supposed to be, or a sound or a taste, anything at all, if you're filling in the gaps to try to tell what your senses tell you, that's a perceptual concept that's called what? I had triangles on it. It's in the book also. That's called closure. That's called closure. So what's a real world example of that?
Like if you break up with someone.
Well, that's a different definition of closure.
I'm kidding.
Which again, if you want to do sometime, let me know in class or you pass. You can take care of that. But closure is like constellations. Constellations, connect the dots stuff. Letters at a. You ever see where people will hold up signs at like a sporting event, and the sign's like solid red, and then the guy behind him will hold up a solid red sign, and the guy behind him will hold up a solid red sign, and then over time it looks like it's like the letters. Or marching bands. If you watch marching bands, they spell out like NDSU at the football games. So you don't interpret that as like, oh, look at these people, they're just random people. You interpret it as the N, because you want to fill in the gaps, right? That's an example of closure. Okay, what's the exact scientific definition for absolute threshold? It's the weakest amount of stimulus that a person can accurately identify what percentage of the time? Is it like 50, 100%? 10%, 5%, what? Huh? No, it's not 100.
50%.
Yeah, it's 50%. It's half the time. Do you see that in the book? Yep. So we line up 300 cups, and we have you drink out of all the cups, and each cup has what we perceive to be the absolute threshold for the average person. We line up 300 cups. Every single one of them has just barely enough sugar so you can taste in it, with water also. Everybody drinks it. If you get at least half of them right, we consider that the absolute threshold. Okay? Alright, what's the difference between rods and cones in the eye?
Your cones see color.
Cones see color.
Rods
Lights are used for like vision in the dark.
Yep. Motion, darker vision. Good. If you look at an image and you perceive something as closer to you, or if you're talking to people like your friends in the Commons and you're able to focus on that person, what is that an example of?
Selective hearing.
Well, that's true, but
Is this
What's
when you
the
showed
term
like
for
the
it?
arrows and the...
somebody said it.
Selective attention.
Nope.
figure ground.
Well, yes, but more specific, I should say. What is it? Somebody said it.
Figure ground.
Figure ground perception. So the figure would be the person talking, the ground is everything else in the background. Okay. And there's like 3 questions about the perception lab, so I'm not going to do that. I forgot to collect that today, by the way, so the yellow sheets, if you could bring those in tomorrow, that would be good. Make sense? Yep.
Mark, we never got to do the
Right.
lunch readers.
Just talk to somebody that did it, or you kind of saw how it was done. Just write a little note on there that says, I didn't get to do this, but here's what I think it would have happened, and that's fine, okay?
Yeah, well, will we just do the same thing for the tasting?
Yeah, the tasting one we talked about a little bit at the end of your class. So I asked Jan, I kind of forgot until the end. We asked Jan and Afro, you're in 5th period, right? Oh, you're in 3rd. Didn't we ask? Oh, I thought
No, we didn't.
talked about it. Okay. Yeah, same thing there. Same thing there. Just have them talk. Because I remember what happened at the end. I said, do you want me to sing or do you want to talk about this or watch a video? And people said that they wanted me to
We
sing.
wanted to hear your lovely voice.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was okay. Okay, next one. What are the couple main parts, what are a couple of the main physical parts that make up the central nervous system?
The central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord.
Brain, spinal cord, you can throw brain stem in there, good. Okay, if you were to go for the peripheral nervous system, or excuse me, what is the peripheral nervous system?
It's everything outside of the spinal cord.
Okay, good. What is the part of the nervous system that regulates involuntary actions? Involuntary actions.
Somatic? No, autonomic.
Autonomic, good. Voluntary then would be?
Somatic.
Somatic, good. Now, out of the autonomic nervous system, there's 2 sub-branches to that. What are those called?
Sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Which one works to speed stuff up?
Sympathetic.
Sympathetic. Which one works to slow stuff down?
Parasympathetic.
Parasympathetic. Good. What are chemical messages sent out by the endocrine system that tell different parts of the body to do something? What are those called? People in this building typically experience a flood of changes in these as they enter and move into puberty. Hormones. There you go. Which part of the brain is primarily responsible with handling that? That has the biggest influence in handling the endocrine system? Pituitary gland. Good. One of the concepts we talk about a lot in psychology is the nature-nurture debate. Nature-nurture debate. Which one refers mostly to biological background?
Nurture.
Nature. Which one it refers more? I'll give you another example. You tell me, is it nature or nurture, okay? Like who your friends are, who you hang out with.
Nurture.
Nurture. A disease you may develop.
Nature.
Tends to be more on the nature side. Good. How about the culture you grow up in?
Nature.
Nurture. Okay, culture is nurture. The sex that you are.
Nature.
Nature. How people respond to you in society related to that sex. Nurture. Good. So be able to identify a few of those things. Okay. What is an EEG?
Isn't it like record like your brain activity?
Yeah, what type of what type of activity does it record?
Brain waves through electricity.
Yeah, electrical activity. Good. Okay, in the brain, what is, I'm going to hold some stuff now and ask you some questions. What is this part, like the whole thing that I'm holding called? Including like the mass of it. Cerebrum. Just the outer part is called what? Cerebral cortex. What are the divisions in the cerebral cortex called? There's 4 of them.
Lobes.
Lobes. Which one is here?
Frontal.
Which one is here?
Parietal.
Which one's here?
Occipital.
Occipital. Which one's this?
Temporal.
Temporal. Okay, good. Which one processes vision?
Occipital.
Good. Okay. What type of neurons pull information in from the peripheral nervous system?
Dendrites?
Well, a dendrite is a part of a neuron. There's a term for this, though. There's 3 general types, although there's some that are like support cells that kind of help to keep everything together.
Is it efferent? Or is it afferent?
In is afferent, out is efferent. So as information comes in, it's afferent neurons. You get to the central nervous system, what type of neurons are processing it?
Different.
Inner neurons. Then the information goes out, what's that called? Efferent, with a E. Okay? So if you have a neural, like I have a nerve like this that goes up here, right? The neural pathway along one specific nerve, it goes all in one direction. So remember, action potentials always go one way. So then I feel something bad on this wrist, signal goes in, says that's not good, quit doing push-ups that way or whatever. So then it goes back out and then I pull my hand away. So it's not like it comes in and then goes out the same pathway. It's like a one-way highway. Okay. In general, how do psychoactive drugs work? What do they mess with?
They inhibit or how to put it?
You could just say one word. What do they mess with?
The
Neurotransmitters. Yep, neurotransmitters. So, if something is a stimulant, it tends to either model a neurotransmitter, like mimic one, that tells you to like go faster, or it tells the body like produce more of that. So if it's a depressant, it's something that either the body interprets as telling the body to slow down, a neurotransmitter, or it tells neurotransmitters that would tell them to be more slowing down to kick up their production some more. Okay. Let's see. What is, like, so we've got sensation and perception. What is the term for people that believe they have like an extra sense? What is that called?
Sixth sense.
There's a 3-letter acronym for it. ESP, what does that stand for?
It's like ESPN or something.
Right. Extrasensory perception. Good. Okay, so let's say Lexi plays guitar a little bit. Let's say every day, period 8, she's like, just wants to come in here and get some extra practice too. So I let her and then I teach her a few things. What happens in her brain and in the neurons within her body that helps her to get better at playing guitar?
It's like muscle memory type of thing.
Yeah, what happens though? Like what grows more that helps her to get better?
The dendrites kind of grow and they attach more or something.
Yep, dendrite connections get better. Exactly. Good. Okay. The brain operates in hemispheres, right? So the left hemisphere, what side of my body does that control?
Right.
Right side, and then right side controls the left. Good. What's the part that connects the two hemispheres together?
Corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum. Anybody watch the video that I embedded in the notes on that? Severed corpus callosum. That one's really interesting if you get a chance. So what happens if they were to sever the corpus callosum? Baltazar has some illness, doctors go in, they cut the corpus callosum. What's going to happen to him?
You have to relearn to do a lot of things.
That's true. Is he going to die?
No.
No.
Where you said like they can't say something that they can write.
That's what the video talks about. If you get a chance to watch it, it's eerie. Like they cover a guy's eye, and then they'll say, okay, look, they'll show him something, and they'll also tell him it. And then it depends on which eye, they cover. But they'll ask him, okay, what is it? He's like, I don't know. And then they'll say, okay, write it down, and he'll be able to write what it is. He's like, oh yeah, that's a church. Like, it's weird. So if you get a chance to watch that video, it's pretty good. Okay. Let's see. When in the notes also on the nervous system, I talked about how the nervous system is cephalized and centralized. What does centralized mean? What is centralized? That's pretty straightforward. What does centralized mean?
Center.
It's what?
To be in the center.
Yeah, to be in the center. So it's in the center of the body. What does cephalized mean then?
On the side.
Spread it out.
No, that's the opposite of cephalized. So if spread out means the opposite of cephalized, cephalized is concentrated. So when we say centralized, we mean it's in the middle of the body. Go this way, you divide vertically, but it's also focused in the head as well, so most of the nervous system's there. What are the 3 main divisions to parts of the brain?
The middle brain,
Midbrain's one of them.
hindbrain,
Hindbrain is another.
Forebrain.
Forebrain. Which one takes up the largest portion of the brain?
Forebrain.
Forebrain, good. Which one carries out a lot of things that we don't have to think about that much?
Hind.
Hindbrain. Where are most of our conscious experiences taking place?
Mid.
Forebrain.
Oh.
Forebrain. Which part serves mostly as an integration center?
Mid.
Midbrain. Okay?
What was the forebrain that we all got wrong? Conscious decisions?
Yeah, conscious decisions, memory, memory storage, so where it's actually kept, learning, a lot of that happens in the forebrain. Okay, I went through pretty much everything. If you have any questions, you can hang out. Maddie, you want to hit stop? I'm going to start uploading that.